My name is Brianna Mercer, and I have endured 32 years in a patriarchal family. 3 weeks ago, after parents passed, my brother kicked me out of the house. He looked me in the eye and said, "Dad decided a long time ago, sons inherit everything. Daughters? Daughters get nothing. That's how it's always been in this family, and that's how it's going to stay." Then he changed the locks on the house where I grew up. The house where I spent 2 years caring for our dying mother while he visited 3 times. The house where I held her hand through chemotherapy while he checked his Rolex and complained about traffic. He threw my belongings onto the lawn and told me I was nothing but a burden, because in my father's eyes, that's all a daughter could ever be. But here's what my brother didn't know. Our mother had spent 8 years preparing for this exact moment. 8 years of secret meetings with lawyers. 8 years of building something he couldn't touch. Before I tell you what happened at the will reading, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story resonates with you. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now let me tell you how a worthless daughter ended up with everything. To understand what Marcus did, you need to understand the Mercer family. My father, Robert Mercer, built his life around one unshakable belief. Sons carry the family forward. Daughters, they marry well and disappear into someone else's name. He wasn't cruel about it, not overtly. He just allocated his attention accordingly. He was a contractor, successful enough to buy us a 4-bedroom colonial in the Connecticut suburbs, nice neighborhood, good schools, a workshop in the garage where he spent weekends with Marcus, teaching him to build things while I helped Mom in the kitchen. My mother, Linda, was the quiet center of our home. She kept a lavender garden in the backyard that she tended every morning. She had this way of smoothing over my father's sharper edges, of making his dismissals feel less personal. Marcus, 6 years older than me, absorbed Dad's worldview like scripture. When he graduated, Dad paid for his business degree at UConn. When Marcus wanted to get into real estate, Dad connected him with every contractor and developer he knew. When I wanted to go to nursing school, Dad said, "Girls don't need expensive educations. You'll get married anyway." I got scholarships. I worked double shifts at a diner. I paid my own way. And I remember, this was 8 years ago, my mother pulling me aside one evening after another dinner, where Dad praised Marcus's first big sale while barely acknowledging my acceptance into the program. "I've taken care of you," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "You won't understand now." But I have. I didn't know what she meant. I thought it was just something mothers say. I had no idea she'd spent that afternoon with a lawyer named Evelyn Cole, signing papers that would change everything. 2 years ago, Mom was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. I still remember the call. I was halfway through a shift at Maplewood Senior Living when my phone buzzed with Dad's number. He never called me at work. He barely called me at all. "Your mother's sick," he said. "You need to come home." Not, "We need you," just, "You need to come home." Like it was my job. Like it had always been my job. I moved back within the week. I requested night shifts so I could be with Mom during the day. Chemotherapy appointments, radiation sessions, the slow deterioration that cancer brings. My paycheck dropped by 20%, but I didn't care. This was my mother. Marcus visited 3 times in 2 years. 3. Each visit lasted less than an hour. He'd sweep in wearing his Hugo Boss suits, kiss Mom's forehead, check his Rolex, and leave. Victoria, his wife, came once and spent the entire time photographing the house for memories while barely looking at Mom. Dad never acknowledged what I was doing. In his mind, this was simply what daughters did. But Mom knew. She started meeting with someone once a month. A lawyer, she said, for insurance paperwork. I'd drive her to an office in Hartford, wait in the car, and drive her home. She always seemed lighter afterward, like she'd set something down she'd been carrying too long. "You're such a good girl," she told me one night when I was helping her into bed. "Whatever happens, Brianna, remember that you did everything right. You showed up. That matters more than anyone knows." I thought she was talking about the cancer. She wasn't. Let me tell you about my brother and his wife. Marcus and Victoria lived in Greenwich, a 5-bedroom house in a neighborhood where the mailboxes probably cost more than my car. Victoria called herself a socialite, which as far as I could tell meant she attended gallery openings and posted photos of her Chanel bags on Instagram. She looked at me like I was something that needed to be cleaned up. Actually, no. She looked at me like she didn't see me at all. I was staff. Background noise. Brianna, she said at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, the last one with Mom well enough to cook, have you ever thought about doing something with more upward mobility? You can't wipe old people's bottoms forever. Mom's hand tightened on her fork. I'm a registered nurse, I said quietly. I help people. Victoria's laugh was a delicate, dismissive thing. Of course you do. But the moment that stayed with me came later that night. I'd gone to the kitchen for water and heard Marcus and Victoria in the hallway. Don't worry about her, Marcus said. Dad's already promised everything to me. Has been for years. She's not getting anything. She's just here to play nurse until Mom's gone. Then she can disappear back into whatever sad little life she has. Good, Victoria whispered back. We need this, Marcus. We really need this. I stood frozen behind the kitchen door, water glass in hand. Something was wrong. I didn't know what. But the desperation in Victoria's voice didn't match the Greenwich lifestyle. The designer clothes, the casual superiority. I went back to bed and told myself it didn't matter. I had no idea how much it would. 6 weeks ago, my mother was declared cancer-free. I remember crying in the oncologist's office. 2 years of fear, of watching her shrink and pale and fight. And she'd won. We went out for lunch at her favorite cafe, and she ordered a glass of champagne for the first time since her diagnosis. I want to visit my mother, she said, meaning Grandma Eleanor, who lived at an assisted living facility in Connecticut. Your father's been promising to drive me for months. 4 weeks ago, they finally went. They never came back. A truck driver fell asleep on I-95. The police said it was instant. They said they didn't suffer. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if anyone says anything else. I was working the night shift when I got the call. I remember walking to the stairwell because I couldn't breathe in the hallway, and sitting on the cold concrete steps, my phone on the floor where I'd dropped it, the Connecticut State Police still on the line, asking if I was there. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember driving home. I remember the smell of Mom's lavender garden when I finally pulled into the driveway at 3 a.m., and I remember thinking she would never tend it again. The funeral was 4 days later. St. Andrew's Episcopal, the church where my parents got married. 80 people came. Marcus gave the eulogy. He talked about Dad for 7 minutes. He mentioned Mom's name twice. And before the reception ended, while I was still accepting condolences from people who remembered my mother far better than my brother seemed to, Marcus pulled me aside. We need to talk, he said, about the house. The funeral flowers were still fresh when my brother informed me I no longer had a home. You need to clear out your things by the end of the week, Marcus said, his voice low enough that the other mourners couldn't hear. We were standing in the church vestibule, the stained glass casting colored shadows across his face. The house is mine now. Dad made that clear years ago. I stared at him. My black dress still had a tissue tucked in the sleeve from crying during the service. Marcus, we haven't even read the will yet. The will is just a formality. He straightened his tie. Hermes, I noticed absently. You know how Dad felt. Sons inherit. That's how it's always been. You should be grateful I'm giving you a week. Grateful? The word came out strangled. Look, he softened his voice into something that might have sounded reasonable to anyone who didn't know him. I understand this is hard. You've been living there, taking care of things. But that was your choice. You could have had a real career, a real life. Instead, you chose to play nurse. That's not my fault. Behind him, Victoria was checking her phone, already bored. That's not... Marcus, I took care of Mom for 2 years, while I what? His eyes went hard. While I built something? While I made something of myself? Don't pretend wiping bedpans is the same as running a business, Brianna. We both know what you are. He stepped back, adjusting his cuffs. 1 week, he said. Then I'm changing the locks. I watched him walk back to Victoria, watched her lean in and smile, watched them leave without saying goodbye to anyone. That was Monday. He didn't even wait a week. Wednesday evening, 2 days after the funeral. I came home from work at 7 p.m., exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the shift. Grief does that, makes everything feel like you're moving through water. My key didn't work. I tried again, confused, thinking maybe the cold had warped something. But no, the lock had been changed. The deadbolt, too. I walked around to the garage. My things, my clothes, my books, Mom's recipe box that she'd given me, everything I owned, had been thrown into cardboard moving boxes and stacked against the wall. Rain from the afternoon had soaked through 2 of them. My nursing school diploma was warped and wet. Through the window, I could see Victoria walking through the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, laughing at something on her phone. She saw me watching. She smiled, lifted her glass in a little toast, and walked away. I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. "The house is legally mine," he said, not even pretending to apologize. "I had my lawyer verify it. Dad's estate, Dad's house, Dad's decision. You have 24 hours to get your stuff off the property before I have it removed." "Marcus, I grew up there. And now you don't live there anymore. That's how life works, Brianna. Maybe if you'd made something of yourself, you wouldn't be standing in the rain right now." I ended the call because I didn't trust myself to speak. I sat down on the wet grass, next to the boxes of my ruined belongings, and held the one thing that hadn't been damaged, Mom's Timex watch, tucked safely in my pocket since the hospital returned her personal effects. That's when I found the letter. The letter was in a box of Mom's things, items Marcus must have assumed were junk, her gardening gloves, a few old photographs, and a cream-colored envelope with my name written in her handwriting. "For Brianna, when the time comes." I didn't open it on that lawn. I couldn't. Instead, I called the only person I could think of, Diane Foster, the head nurse at Maplewood, who'd been something like a mentor to me for 3 years. She arrived in her Honda Odyssey within 30 minutes. "Get in," she said, not asking questions. "You're staying with me tonight. And tomorrow. And as long as you need." Her apartment was small, 2 bedrooms in a Hartford complex that had seen better days, but it was warm and dry. And when she handed me a cup of tea and a blanket, I finally let myself cry. Later, when I could breathe again, I opened Mom's letter. Her handwriting was shaky. She must have written it during chemo, when her hands trembled constantly. "My darling Brianna, if you're reading this, then what I feared has happened. Your father and your brother have shown you exactly who they are. I want you to know, I saw it. I always saw it. And I couldn't change your father, God knows I tried. But I could protect you. Contact Evelyn Cole at Harrison & Cole in Hartford. She has everything you need. All the papers, all the arrangements. Everything I couldn't give you while I was alive. You are not a burden. You never were. You are the best thing I ever did. I love you more than lavender and sunshine and every good thing, Mom." I read it 3 times before the words made sense. Then I called the number she'd written at the bottom. Harrison & Cole occupied a brownstone in downtown Hartford, the kind of old money building with brass nameplates and hardwood floors that creaked with history. I felt underdressed in my clean scrubs, but Evelyn Cole's assistant just smiled and led me to a corner office lined with law books and soft afternoon light. Evelyn was not what I expected. Late 50s, silver hair swept into an elegant twist, wearing a charcoal Armani suit. But her eyes were warm when she shook my hand. "Brianna," she said, "I've been waiting for your call. Your mother spoke about you constantly." That almost broke me right there. I swallowed. "She left me a letter. She said you had papers?" Evelyn gestured to a chair. I do. Your mother and I worked together for 8 years, Brianna. She was one of the most deliberate people I've ever represented. 8 years? That was the same time frame Mom had whispered about when I was accepted into nursing school. Your mother knew your father's intentions, Evelyn said carefully. She knew Marcus would inherit everything Robert controlled, and she couldn't change that. She couldn't change him. But she could plan around it. What does that mean? Evelyn folded her hands. It means your mother made arrangements that exist entirely outside your father's estate. Arrangements that Marcus doesn't know about, that your father didn't know about. The room suddenly felt smaller. What kind of arrangements? The kind you'll learn about at the formal will reading next week. Both your parents' wills need to be read together. She paused. But I want you to trust me until then. Can you do that? Whatever Marcus says, whatever he threatens, don't react. Don't sign anything. Just wait. Why? Her smile was almost gentle. Because your mother is about to have the last word. 3 days before the will reading, Marcus called. It was 10 p.m. I was sitting in Diane's kitchen, the lights dim, trying to read a book without absorbing a single word. His name on my phone screen made my stomach clench. Brianna. His voice was friendly, which was somehow worse than hostile. I've been thinking. This situation, us being at odds, it's not good for anyone. You kicked me out of my home 2 days after our parents' funeral, Marcus. I know. I could have handled it better. He actually sounded apologetic. That's why I'm calling. I want to make this right. I waited. I've drawn up a simple agreement, he continued. You sign away any claim to contest the estate, and in exchange I give you $10,000. Cash. Enough to get yourself settled somewhere nice. $10,000. For a lifetime of being told I was less. For 2 years of caring for our mother while he visited 3 times. For every dismissal, every slight, every moment Marcus and my father made me feel like I was taking up space that should have belonged to someone worthier. No. Brianna, be reasonable. You're not going to win anything in probate. Dad's will is clear. All you'll do is spend money on lawyers and drag this out for months. Take the money. Start over. I said no, Marcus. I'll see you at the will reading. His voice hardened instantly. You're making a mistake. You know that, right? You're going to walk out of that room with nothing. Less than nothing. And you'll wish you'd taken this offer. Then that's my choice to make. Fine. He practically spat the word. But remember, I tried to be generous. What happens next is on you. The line went dead. I set down the phone with shaking hands. Then I did exactly what Evelyn told me to do. I waited. I have to pause here and ask you something. Have you ever been pressured to sign something by family? Told you have no right to ask for what's fair? That feeling, that specific helplessness, it stays with you. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment. I read every single one, I promise. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now might be the time. Because what happens next at that will reading? It changed everything. The will reading was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Thursday at Harrison and Cole. The conference room had a mahogany table long enough to seat 12, though only 6 of us were there. Marcus, Victoria, me, Evelyn Cole, her assistant who would serve as witness, and, to Marcus's visible surprise, my grandmother. Eleanor. Marcus's smile faltered when Grandma walked in. I didn't know you were coming. Grandma Eleanor Whitfield was 82 years old and sharper than most people half her age. She wore a navy dress, her silver hair pinned back, and the sapphire ring she'd worn for as long as I could remember glinted on her finger. I was asked to be here, she said simply, taking the seat next to me. By my daughter. Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances. Well, Marcus said, recovering his confidence. The more the merrier, I suppose, though I don't see why we need to make this complicated. Dad's wishes were clear. Evelyn took her place at the head of the table, folders arranged precisely before her. Before we begin, I should note that we will be reading two wills today: Robert Mercer's will and Linda Mercer's will. They are separate documents with separate provisions. Two wills? Victoria frowned. Why would that matter? Everything was jointly owned. Evelyn's expression remained neutral. Not everything, as it turns out. I felt Grandma's hand find mine under the table and squeeze. Marcus straightened his Rolex with a practiced gesture. Fine. Let's get this over with. Read Dad's will first. Evelyn opened the first folder. Very well. Last will and testament of Robert Allen Mercer, dated 14 months ago, witnessed and notarized in Hartford County. The room went quiet. This was it. Dad's will was exactly what Marcus expected. Evelyn read through the standard provisions: executor appointments, debt payments, funeral instructions, before reaching the distribution of assets. To my son, Marcus Robert Mercer, I leave 70% of my personal assets, including my vehicle, my workshop tools and equipment, and my share of all financial accounts held jointly with my wife. Marcus nodded slowly, satisfaction spreading across his features. To my daughter, Brianna Lynn Mercer, I leave 30% of my remaining personal assets. 30% of remaining assets, Victoria murmured, doing the math. After debts and expenses, so basically nothing. That's not, I started. It's fine, Marcus cut in, magnanimous now. Dad's accounts totaled about $80,000. You'll get something, Brianna. Maybe $24,000 after everything's settled. He smiled at me like he was doing me a favor. That's more than I expected Dad to leave you, honestly. Marcus, Grandma said quietly, perhaps you could let the lawyer finish. What's left to finish? He leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the backrest. The house was Dad's. The money was Dad's. I'm the primary heir. Brianna gets a consolation prize, which is generous under the circumstances. Victoria pulled out her phone, probably already composing a post about her inheritance. Actually, Evelyn said, her voice cutting through Marcus's satisfaction, there's quite a bit left to discuss. Robert's will represents only a portion of your parents' combined estate. Combined? Marcus's confidence flickered. What do you mean, combined? Evelyn closed the first folder and opened the second. Your mother's estate is separate and significantly larger than your father's. The room went very still. Marcus stopped smiling. Wait. Marcus held up a hand. Mom didn't have her own estate. She was a housewife. Everything she had came from Dad. That's not accurate, Evelyn said calmly. It is accurate. I know my own family. Marcus stood up, as if the height would give him authority. Whatever you're about to read, whatever little savings account Mom might have had, it doesn't change anything. Dad made his wishes clear for decades. The son inherits. The daughter takes what she's given and is grateful for it. He turned to me, and the venom was back. This is what I was trying to spare you, Brianna. This embarrassment. You're sitting here hoping Mom left you something. What, her jewelry? Her recipe cards? It doesn't matter. The house is still Dad's. The real money is still Dad's. And you're still the same person you've always been. Marcus, Grandma said, her voice low with warning. He ignored her. I hope you enjoy being homeless, Brianna, because I made sure you have nothing to fall back on. No home, no family support, nothing. Maybe next time you'll think twice before... Mr. Mercer, Evelyn's voice was steel. Sit down. The command was so unexpected that Marcus actually obeyed, dropping back into his chair. I understand you have opinions about how your parents' assets should be distributed, Evelyn continued. But this is a legal proceeding, not a family argument. Your mother's will contains specific provisions that supersede your assumptions. If you interrupt again, I will ask you to leave and receive the information in writing. Victoria grabbed Marcus's arm, whispering something urgent. He sat back, jaw tight. Evelyn picked up the second folder. And now, she said, we address the matter of Linda Mercer's estate, including the final section your mother specifically asked me to read aloud. For one terrible moment, I doubted everything. Marcus's words echoed in my head. Mom was a housewife. Everything she had came from Dad. What if he was right? What if the letter, the lawyer, the promises, what if it was all just a mother trying to comfort a daughter she knew would be left behind? I looked down at the Timex watch on my wrist. Mom's watch. The leather was cracked, the face scratched from years of wear. She could have afforded something nicer, I knew that now. But she wore this one every day until the day she died. What did she really leave me? Victoria was whispering to Marcus, her manicured nails tapping against the table. She probably just has some life insurance or something. A few $1,000s. Nothing that changes our situation. Our situation. The phrase caught my attention. What situation? Grandma's hand was still in mine under the table. I felt her squeeze again, firmer this time, as if she could sense my wavering. "Brianna," she murmured, so quietly only I could hear. "Your mother was the smartest woman I ever raised. Trust her." I looked at Evelyn, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Patient. Almost anticipatory. "I'm ready," I said. Marcus snorted. "Ready for disappointment." Victoria laughed. Evelyn ignored them both. She opened the folder and removed several documents. I could see official seals, notarized stamps, pages dense with legal text. "Last will and testament of Linda Eleanor Mercer," she began. "Updated 18 months ago, witnessed by myself and a notary public of Hartford County. The testator was evaluated by Dr. Sarah Hammond, a board-certified psychiatrist, and declared fully competent to execute this document." She looked directly at Marcus. "The first item is a letter Mrs. Mercer requested I read aloud to all present." Marcus shifted in his seat. 18 months ago? Mom was in the middle of chemo 18 months ago. Her judgment was compromised. "I anticipated that concern," Evelyn replied, her tone even. "Which is why I have Dr. Hammond's written evaluation confirming your mother's full cognitive capacity at the time of signing. I also have video documentation of the signing itself." She produced a USB drive and set it on the table. "Your mother wanted no ambiguity. She recorded herself explaining every decision in this document. The video is 32 minutes long and available for review if anyone wishes to contest her competency." Victoria's phone had stopped moving. She stared at the USB drive like it might bite her. "That's—" Marcus swallowed. "That's very thorough." "Your mother was a thorough woman." Evelyn's lips curved, just slightly. "Now, the letter." She lifted a single page, handwritten on cream-colored stationery. I recognized the paper. Mom had a box of it in her desk, the expensive kind she used for important correspondence. "To my children," Evelyn read, her voice clear and measured. "If you are hearing this letter, then I am gone, and the moment I dreaded has arrived." My throat tightened. "I love you both. I want you to know that first. But love does not make me blind." Marcus went very still. "For 35 years, I watched your father favor Marcus in ways he didn't even recognize as favoritism. It was simply how he saw the world. Sons matter, daughters serve. I couldn't change him. Believe me, I tried." Evelyn paused, looking up at us. "There's more," she said. "But perhaps I should continue after everyone has had a moment." "Keep reading," Marcus said tightly. Evelyn nodded, and I braced myself. Evelyn continued reading, and my mother's voice seemed to fill the room. "When Brianna was born, Robert said, 'Maybe next time we'll have another boy.' I held my daughter in my arms and promised her silently that she would never be next time to me. I watched her grow up working twice as hard for half the acknowledgement. I watched her pay her own way through nursing school while Marcus received every advantage. I watched her come home to care for me during the worst 2 years of my life, changing my sheets when I was too sick to move, holding my hand during chemotherapy, singing me the songs I sang to her as a baby. Marcus visited 3 times in 2 years. I do not write this to condemn my son, but I write it to explain why I made the choices I did. The assets I leave to Brianna are not a reward. They are not favoritism. They are the balance I could not provide while I was alive. They are what she was always owed. Victoria made a small, strangled sound. If Marcus is hearing this and feels angry, I understand. But I ask him to consider, why does he feel entitled to everything? Who taught him that? And what did he do to earn it, other than being born male? Marcus's face had gone pale. Evelyn looked up. The letter concludes with, "Brianna, my darling girl, you were never a burden. You were my heart. Live well, be happy, and never let anyone tell you that you don't deserve every good thing. With all my love, forever, Mom." The silence was absolute. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Grandma pressed a tissue into my hand. "Now," Evelyn said quietly, "let's discuss what your mother actually left you." "First," Evelyn said, pulling a document from the folder, "the house." Marcus straightened. "The house is part of Dad's estate. It was always in his name." "Actually, it wasn't." Evelyn slid the document across the table. 5 years ago, your parents executed a deed transfer. The property at 127 Maple Drive was transferred from joint ownership to Linda Mercer's sole name." "What?" Marcus grabbed the paper, scanning it frantically. Why would Dad agree to that?" "For liability protection. Your father was facing a potential lawsuit from a dissatisfied client at the time. Moving the house into your mother's name protected it from any legal judgments against his business. It's a common estate planning strategy." "I never heard about any lawsuit. It was settled out of court, but the deed transfer remained." Evelyn produced another document. "This is the recorded deed from Hartford County Land Records dated 5 years ago. The property, currently valued at approximately $650,000, belonged solely to your mother." Victoria's face had gone a strange color. "But that means—" "It means your mother had full authority to leave it to whomever she chose." Evelyn looked at me. "And she chose you, Brianna." "No." Marcus shook his head. "No, this has to be a mistake. He always said—" "Your father believed what he wanted to believe," Grandma said sharply. "Linda told him the deed transfer was temporary for the lawsuit. She never transferred it back, and he never checked." I stared at the deed, my mother's signature at the bottom, neat and deliberate. The house where I grew up, the house where I cared for her, the house Marcus had thrown me out of. It was mine. It had been mine the whole time. "Additionally," Evelyn continued, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of the room, "there is the matter of the irrevocable trust." "The what?" Marcus looked like he'd been hit. 8 years ago, your mother established an irrevocable trust with Brianna as the sole beneficiary. An irrevocable trust, once established, cannot be modified or dissolved without the beneficiary's consent. It exists entirely outside the probate process. 8 years ago. Marcus turned to Grandma. You gave her the money. You gave her the—" Grandma didn't flinch. "I gave my daughter money that was mine to give. What she did with it was her business." "The trust was funded with a $400,000 gift from Mrs. Whitfield," Evelyn confirmed. "Your mother invested it conservatively in index funds over the past 8 years. The current value," she consulted her notes, "is approximately $1.2 million. Victoria made a sound like she'd been punched. $1.2 million, Marcus repeated slowly. "That is correct. And because the trust is irrevocable and was funded entirely with your grandmother's gift, separate property, never commingled with marital assets, it was never part of your parents' joint estate. It has always belonged to Brianna." I couldn't process the number. $1.2 million. My mother who wore a Timex watch and grew her own vegetables, had quietly built me a fortune while I thought I was barely getting by. "This is fraud," Marcus sputtered. Dad didn't know about this. He would never have—" "Your father's knowledge is irrelevant," Evelyn said calmly. "The trust was legally established with funds that were never his. He had no claim to it, and neither do you." The USB drive sat on the table, untouched. 32 minutes of my mother, explaining why she'd done what she did. "There is one final asset," Evelyn said. Marcus looked like he might be sick. Victoria's grip on his arm had turned white-knuckled. "Your mother held a life insurance policy with Northwestern Mutual, valued at $500,000. The beneficiary was designated as," she paused, "Brianna Lynn Mercer, solely." Mom had life insurance? I hadn't known. I hadn't known any of this. "She purchased it 12 years ago when you were 16. She paid the premiums from her personal account, money your grandmother sent her annually as gifts. Your father was never a named beneficiary." "But I'm her son," Marcus said. And there was something desperate in his voice now, something cracked. "I'm her firstborn. She can't just leave me nothing. She can't." "She didn't leave you nothing, Mr. Mercer." Evelyn pulled out a final page. "Your mother's will specifies that you are to receive her personal effects, photograph albums, her jewelry collection, and a letter she wrote specifically for you." "A letter?" Marcus laughed, but it was hollow. "She leaves Brianna millions, and I get a letter." "And the jewelry has meaningful pieces," Evelyn offered. "I don't want her jewelry." Marcus slammed his palm on the table. Victoria jumped. "I want what I was promised. I want what I earned. What you earned." I spoke before I could stop myself. The words came out quiet, but they filled the room. "You visited Mom 3 times in 2 years, Marcus. 3 times. You told me I was nothing but a burden while I was holding her hand through chemotherapy. What exactly did you earn?" He stared at me. I stared back. "Let's discuss the total figures," Evelyn said, and I could hear the faintest satisfaction in her professional tone. "This is contested." Marcus stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled. "I'm contesting all of it. Mom wasn't in her right mind. The chemo, the medication. She couldn't have made these decisions rationally." Evelyn remained seated. "As I mentioned, your mother underwent a cognitive evaluation by Dr. Sarah Hammond, a board-certified psychiatrist unaffiliated with her medical treatment. The evaluation concluded that Mrs. Mercer was fully competent and understood the nature and consequences of her decisions. Psychiatrists can be wrong. Additionally, the signing of her will was recorded on video." Evelyn tapped the USB drive. "In it, your mother clearly articulates her reasons for each bequest. She also directly addresses the possibility that you might contest and explains why such a contest would fail." Marcus's jaw worked. "Furthermore," Evelyn continued, "the irrevocable trust and life insurance beneficiary designations are not subject to will contests. They are independent legal instruments that bypass probate entirely. You have no standing to challenge them." "There has to be something. If you wish to contest your father's will, you may do so, though I'd advise consulting with your own counsel about the costs versus the potential recovery. As for your mother's arrangements..." Evelyn's gaze was level. "She anticipated your objections, Mr. Mercer. She spent 8 years making sure everything was ironclad." Grandma Eleanor spoke up. "My daughter didn't do this out of spite, Marcus. She did it because she knew, we all knew, that without protection Brianna would receive nothing, and Brianna deserved better than nothing." Marcus turned to Grandma, his face contorted. "You helped her hide this. You helped her cut me out." "I helped her protect her daughter," Grandma said simply. "The same thing any mother would do." Marcus had no answer to that. Victoria broke first. "This is insane." She stood up, her careful composure finally shattering. "She's a nurse. She wipes old people's behinds for a living, and she gets $2 million while you what, Mrs. Mercer?" Evelyn asked mildly. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. She'd said too much and she knew it. "While you're about to lose your house in Greenwich?" Grandma said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. "Did you think we didn't know about Marcus's failed investment? The $400,000 loss? The foreclosure notices?" Marcus went white. "How do you—" "Linda knew," Grandma said. "She knew about the debts, the bad deals, the desperation. She knew you were counting on this inheritance to bail you out. That's why she made sure you couldn't touch what she'd built for Brianna. I looked at my brother, really looked at him for the first time in years. The Rolex, the Hugo Boss suit, the BMW in the parking lot. All of it was scaffolding, I realized. A facade built on credit and promises and the assumption that our parents' money would always be there to catch him. You were planning to take everything, I said slowly. Not because you needed it, because you were drowning. I'm not drowning, Marcus snapped. I had a setback, that's all. A temporary setback that Dad's estate would have saved you, I finished. Except the estate wasn't what you thought it was. Victoria sank back into her chair, mascara starting to smear. You spent your whole life being told you deserved everything, I said. And you never stopped to wonder if that was actually true. Marcus didn't respond. He couldn't. I want to stop here for a moment. I know some of you are watching and thinking, why would Victoria say that out loud? Why would she reveal their financial problems in front of everyone? The answer is fear. When the thing you've been counting on disappears, your survival instincts take over. You stop thinking about appearances. If this story is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button, because we're almost at the end, and there's one more thing I need to tell you. Evelyn waited until the room was quiet again before speaking. For the record, she said, let me summarize the total assets passing to Brianna Mercer. She consulted her notes, though I suspected she knew the numbers by heart. From her mother's estate, the property at 127 Maple Drive, estimated value $650,000. From the irrevocable trust established in 2018, $1,200,000. From the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Policy, $500,000. She looked up. Additionally, from her father's estate, 30% of remaining liquid assets, approximately $24,000. Victoria's breathing had gone shallow. The total, Evelyn continued, her voice measured and professional, is approximately $2.374 million. The number hung in the air, $2.374 million. My mother, who grew vegetables and wore a Timex watch and never bought anything she didn't need, had left me nearly $2.5 million. Marcus made a strange sound. He was gripping the edge of the table, his knuckles bone white, his face the color of old paper. He tried to stand, maybe to protest, maybe to leave. And then his eyes rolled back and he crumpled. His head caught the edge of the table on the way down. Victoria screamed. Evelyn's assistant was already moving, calling 911, checking his pulse. I sat frozen, watching my brother unconscious on the carpet of a law office, brought down by numbers on a page. He's breathing, the assistant reported. Pulse is steady, probably just fainted. Grandma squeezed my hand, Your mother would be proud of you, she said softly. Not for the money, for who you've become despite all of it. I couldn't answer. I was still trying to understand. The paramedics said it was syncope, a sudden drop in blood pressure triggered by shock. Nothing dangerous, just his body's way of processing what his mind couldn't accept. They bandaged the small cut on his forehead and recommended he see his doctor, but he refused transport. 20 minutes after collapsing, Marcus was back in his chair, pale and unsteady, Victoria hovering over him like he might shatter. He looked at me. You knew, he said hoarsely. You knew about all of this. I didn't. I meant it. Not until a few days ago. And even then I didn't know how much. But you suspected. You sat here looking all innocent and you suspected. I knew Mom loved me. I kept my voice even. That's all I knew for certain. His laugh was bitter, broken. And I didn't? She didn't love me? I think she loved you, I said slowly. I think she loved who you could have been, but she also saw who you chose to become. Victoria's hand tightened on his shoulder. Marcus, we should go. We need to figure out... Figure out what? His voice cracked. How to pay our mortgage? How to tell the bank we're not getting anything? He looked at me with something that might have been desperation. Brianna, you have to help me. We're family. The words hung there. Family. 3 visits in 2 years. You're just dead weight. Enjoy being homeless. Marcus, I said, you kicked me out of my own home before our mother's flowers had wilted. You told me I was nothing but a burden. You tried to get me to sign away everything for $10,000. I stood up. I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen. You have to understand, Marcus said, his voice rising. I was stressed. The investments, the pressure. I didn't mean half of what I said. That's not who I really am. Then who are you, Marcus? I asked quietly. Because I've known you for 28 years, and I've never seen any evidence of anyone different. He flinched. I'm not going to let my brother become homeless, I said. I'm not cruel, but I'm also not going to bail you out of decisions you made while treating me like I was worthless. So what then? You just walk away with millions and I get nothing? You get exactly what you earned. I picked up my bag, the same worn leather bag I'd carried through nursing school, through 2 years of night shifts, through every moment my family dismissed me. You get the consequences of your choices, the same way I'm finally getting the consequences of mine. Victoria started to speak, but I held up my hand. If you want to contact me, you can go through Evelyn, but any personal relationship between us? I looked at my brother, this man I'd grown up with, who'd held my hand at our first day of school, who'd become someone I barely recognized. That's going to take time, a lot of time, and honestly, I don't know if we'll ever get there. Brianna, I'm not doing this to hurt you. My voice was steady. I'm doing it because I finally understand something Mom tried to teach me. I don't have to accept treatment that I wouldn't give to someone else. I walked toward the door. Mom loved you, I said over my shoulder, but she loved me enough to protect me from you. That's the difference. I didn't wait for him to respond. Grandma followed me out to the hallway. Wait, she said, catching my arm. I have something for you. She reached into her purse and withdrew a small velvet box, navy blue, worn soft at the corners. Your mother wanted you to have this. She asked me to give it to you after the reading. Inside was her sapphire ring, the one Grandma had worn as long as I could remember, the one I'd admired since I was a little girl. Grandma, I can't. This is yours. It was mine, she corrected gently. I gave it to your mother on her wedding day, and she gave it back when she knew she was dying, so I could give it to you when the time was right. I slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. There's something else you should know, Grandma said. Something even your mother didn't put in the will. I looked up. Linda wanted to leave your father, years ago before you were born. But then she got pregnant with Marcus and she stayed. She stayed for you kids. I never knew. No one did. She made the best of it. But she always regretted that she couldn't give you a different childhood. Grandma's eyes were bright with unshed tears. The trust, the insurance, all of it. It was her way of giving you the freedom she never had. The freedom to walk away from people who don't value you. I hugged her, this tiny woman who had helped my mother plan for 8 years to give me a future. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me, she said. Just live well. That's all your mother ever wanted. Behind us, I heard Marcus and Victoria finally leaving, their voices low and strained. I didn't look back. 1 month later, I sat in the office of a financial advisor in Hartford, someone Evelyn had recommended, a woman with 20 years of experience and no interest in getting rich off my inexperience. Here's my recommendation, she said, sliding a document across the desk. We keep the trust invested. Draw only what you need for living expenses. The life insurance goes into a high-yield savings account for emergencies and opportunities. We pay off your student loans immediately. That's about $42,000. And you keep working. Keep working? I'd expected her to suggest I retire, travel, do something extravagant. You love your job, she said simply. Money shouldn't change who you are. It should just give you options. So that's what I did. I paid off my loans, a debt I'd been chipping away at for 6 years, gone in a single transaction. I kept my position at Maplewood, though I switched to day shifts now that I didn't need the night differential. I stayed with Diane for another month while I figured out what to do about the house. Because the house was complicated. It was where I'd cared for Mom, where I'd been thrown out like garbage, where Marcus and Victoria had drunk wine while my belongings soaked in the rain. It was also the place where Mom had grown her lavender garden, where she'd tucked me in at night, where she'd quietly met with lawyers and built a future I never knew existed. I wasn't ready to live there, not yet, but I wasn't ready to sell it either. Rent it, Diane suggested one evening. Let it pay for itself while you figure things out. There's no rush. She was right. For the first time in my life, there was no rush. I had time now. Mom had given me that. 3 months after the will reading, Grandma called me with news. Marcus had to sell the Greenwich house, she said. Victoria filed for divorce last week. I was at work, on my break, sitting in the same stairwell where I'd learned our parents were dead. Strange how places accumulate moments. How do you know? His listing showed up on Zillow, and Victoria's Instagram is very forthcoming. Grandma's tone was dry. She's already rebranding herself as a survivor of narcissistic financial abuse. Direct quote. I almost laughed. Almost. Is he okay? Define okay, Grandma sighed. He's living in an apartment in Bridgeport, still working in real estate, but not at his old firm. I don't think anyone's inviting him to the Greenwich cocktail parties anymore. The version of me from 3 months ago might have felt some satisfaction. The new version, the one who'd had time to process, to grieve, to heal, just felt tired. I don't wish him harm, I said. I know you don't. That's the difference between you and him. Did Mom know? About the debts, the financial trouble? She suspected. That's partly why she did what she did. She knew if there was money available, Marcus would find a way to take it. Not because he's evil, but because he was raised to believe he was owed it. I thought about my brother, alone in a Bridgeport apartment, his wife gone, his lifestyle collapsed. I thought about the boy who used to chase me around the backyard, who let me ride on his shoulders at parades. I didn't know where that boy had gone, but I knew I couldn't save him. I'm going to the house this weekend, I told Grandma. First time since everything. Do you want company? Yeah, I think I do. The lavender garden had survived the winter. Not all of it. Some of the plants had gone brown and brittle, but there, in the early April sunlight, I could see new green shoots pushing up through the soil. Life, stubborn and persistent, refusing to give up. Grandma stood beside me, her arm linked through mine. She planted this garden the year you were born, she said. Did you know that? I didn't. I'd always assumed it was just something Mom enjoyed, not something with meaning. She said lavender was for protection, for purification. She wanted good things to grow around you. I walked through the back door. My key worked perfectly now. I'd had the locks changed weeks ago, and stood in the kitchen where I'd made Mom countless cups of tea, where I'd held her hand through nausea and fear. The house was quiet. Marcus had left it relatively clean when he'd moved out, either out of some remnant of shame or because he'd been too rushed to trash it. Mom's things were still here, her recipe cards in the drawer, her reading glasses on the nightstand, her robe hanging in the closet. I went to her bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. On the nightstand was a small album I'd never seen before. Inside, photographs of me from infancy to adulthood. First steps, first day of school, nursing graduation, every milestone she'd witnessed. On the first page, in her careful handwriting, for my bravest girl. Grandma sat down beside me. She spent weeks putting that together, she said. During chemo, when she couldn't sleep, she said it was her way of counting the good things. I held the album to my chest and finally let myself cry. Not grief this time, gratitude. 6 months after that will reading, I enrolled in a nurse practitioner program. It was something I'd wanted for years, the chance to do more than bedside care, to diagnose and treat, to help patients in a deeper way. But the program was expensive, and between my student loans and my barely there savings, it had always seemed like a distant dream. Now I could afford it. I used money from the trust, following the plan my financial advisor laid out, enough for tuition and books, with the rest still growing quietly in the background. I kept working part-time at Maplewood because I wasn't ready to leave the patients I'd grown to love. Diane and I found an apartment together near the hospital, 2 bedrooms, a tiny balcony where I started growing lavender in pots. She said living alone was overrated anyway, and I said having a roommate meant someone to split streaming subscriptions with. We both knew it was more than that. Grandma called every Sunday. She'd tell me stories about Mom as a child, about their adventures before she met Dad, about the woman she was before life wore her down. I recorded the calls on my phone, building an archive of the mother I was still getting to know. And the house on Maple Drive? I rented it to a young family, a nurse actually from Maplewood, and her husband and 2 little girls. The older daughter asked if she could take care of the lavender garden. I said yes. I said yes to a lot of things that year. To opportunities, to rest, to the slow process of understanding that I was worth more than I'd been told. My mother didn't give me money. She gave me permission to believe I deserved it. I've thought a lot about why Marcus became who he is. Not to excuse him, there's no excuse for how he treated me, but to understand. My brother grew up being told he was special simply because he was born male. He didn't have to prove anything. The world was his by default. So he never developed the muscles for empathy, for earning what he had, for recognizing that other people's needs mattered as much as his own. Psychologists call it entitlement, the belief that you deserve things without effort. It's not born, it's taught. And once it's there, it's almost impossible to unlearn, because admitting you're not special means admitting your whole identity was a lie. Marcus isn't a monster. He's a product of a system that told him he was worth more than he was, and when reality finally caught up, he didn't know how to handle it. I don't know if he'll ever change. I hope he does. But I also know that his change isn't my responsibility. My responsibility is to myself, to live the life Mom wanted for me, to set boundaries that protect my peace, to remember that walking away from toxic people isn't cruelty. It's survival. If you're watching this and you've been told you're not enough, by family, by partners, by anyone who should have loved you, I want you to know, they were wrong. You were always enough. Sometimes the people who love us protect us in ways we don't see. And sometimes we have to become our own protectors. That's what I learned from my mother. If this story meant something to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me about someone who protected you or someone you wish had. And if you want more stories like this, check the links in the description. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know.